She was a young mother with dreams of a brighter future.
She was very quiet. She was a nice girl.
They were the couple that opened up their hearts and home to her.
She was looking for somebody to help take care of her, protect her, keep her safe.
It seemed like a chance for a fresh start after ending a rocky relationship. Until a jaw-dropping crime changed everything.
What's wrong?
Something was telling me, don't go over there and look in that bag. Please, Andrea, don't do it.
You had a hand and a foot in one bag and a hand and a foot in the other bag.
As police raced to identify their victim, they would come face to face with true evil.
I had never in my career experienced this type of death.
It did not make sense. It didn't seem like this is reality.
It was like a nightmare on Elm Street.
In this case, what speaks to me is that pure evil exists in this world.
Monday, April 7th, 2008. It's the start of another work week in the picturesque town of Greenville, South Carolina. But for local police, their work week is kicking off in high gear. At 7 a.m., emergency dispatchers receive a harrowing call. On the line is resident Sandra Barnes.
Greenville 911, what's your emergency?
I need to talk to someone. There's a bag on my door and I got a threatening note on my car.
An officer soon arrives at Sandra's apartment building in South Greenville.
Is this the bag?
Yes, someone must have dropped it off last night.
The officer picked up the bag, carried it down to his car, set it on the trunk, untied the bag.
What the officer sees inside its dark recesses is horrifying.
Was a hand and a foot, and the foot, the toes were cut off of the foot, and the palm of the hand had one of the toes like it was staged.
7-1 Pox. I'm gonna need major clients to come out here.
The responding officer immediately notifies the homicide unit of the threatening note and body parts.
He said they found some hands and feet. I figured maybe a medical student or somebody with, possession of cadavers were, maybe playing a prank on somebody.
But another discovery a mile away will soon prove this is no joke.
What are you doing? What's wrong?
On Rose Avenue, local resident Andrea Drummond and her black lab are going for a walk, but unexpectedly wind up at the front door of a neighboring residence.
Please send somebody out here.
In my guts, I knew something was wrong when I saw that bag. I knew it was something that wasn't supposed to be in there. So I called the city of Greenville.
My dog found the bag on the porch.
Police respond to the scene. There, they make another gruesome discovery inside the garbage bag.
Another hand and another foot were found. So now we have two locations with body parts.
Honestly, at that point, I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna chase body parts all day long.
By the time detectives arrive, officers have also found a second letter.
The letter was basically addressing a lady by the name of Grace Davis.
But who is Grace Davis, and what's her connection to this horrifying crime?
It was priority number one that investigators locate and identify this Grace Davis woman.
Growing up in Greenville, South Carolina, shy, even-keeled teenager Grace Davis was never the center of attention.
Grace was very quiet. She was a nice girl.
Grace had a relatively shy personality. While she kept to herself a lot, she never had any trouble making friends.
When Grace became an adult, one particular friendship blossomed into something more.
She met a charismatic man named Willie Dayton. The two really hit it off, and in 1998, they settled down and got married.
They had 3 children together, but pretty soon into her relationship with Willie, she started to notice a distinct change in him.
No, I'm done with this.
Willie became easily frustrated and eventually turned verbally abusive towards Grace.
By the summer of 2007, Grace had all of the verbal abuse she could endure. She was ready to end the marriage.
Grace began to put the marriage behind her and move on with the help of the Compass of Carolina agency.
Compass of Carolina is a facility that helps members of the South Carolina upstate community. with family counseling and violence intervention.
Well, Willie would come home, the nights that he did come home, screaming, yelling. He never put hands on us, thank God for that. But I mean, the verbal abuse, I said, I can't do this anymore. I had to get out.
She was probably happy to be away from him, but on the other hand, she didn't have a place for her and her children to live.
While at Compass, Grace struck up a friendship with another survivor, Latrice James.
The two women really connect, and Latrice has suggestions for Grace to get back on her feet.
So I have this brother, Clarence. He might be able to help you find a place to live.
Oh my goodness, really?
So Latrice introduces Grace to Clarence Jenkins. He's in his mid-20s and he's married to a woman named Carmen.
Hey, so this is my brother, Clarence. Hi, Clarence.
Hey, my sister was telling me, you know, my wife and I got plenty of room at our spot, you know. You and your kids, y'all more than welcome to come crash till you get on your feet, no problem.
Are you serious?
No problem.
Clarence decided that he liked Grace, and he really just brought her home one day and said, Grace Davis is going to live with us for a while.
Grace was somewhat surprised that Clarence's wife, Carmen, welcomed her and her children with open arms.
By all accounts, Carmen is receptive to the idea that Grace is going to be moving into the home.
Look, guys, this is your room.
Yeah, Mom! You gotta slow down.
They're excited. Let me show you where you'll be sleeping.
Okay, thank you.
This will be your room.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough.
No worries. You guys can stay here as long as you like.
Thank you so much,
You're
Carmen.
so welcome.
God bless you.
You guys are...
Like Grace, 20-year-old Carmen Jenkins knew about life's hardships firsthand.
Carmen came from humble means, but was a very good student, extremely intelligent.
But during her freshman year of college, Carmen's life changed forever when her mother was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness.
She had to leave college because her mom was sick, and that's when she met her husband.
They met through a mutual friend, and they formed a relationship and decided to get married. He wasn't highly intelligent, but he was very street smart. And once she entered into this relationship, she became extremely committed.
She loved him to the point to where she would do anything for him.
In the summer of 2007, Clarence and Carmen were struggling to make ends meet. But even so, they were more than happy to share what little they had with Grace and her kids.
They had both been through struggles in their lives, and they thought it would be great to help Grace get back on her feet.
The three of them hit it off really well.
By heads.
But in the fall, Clarence was stopped for speeding in Greenville, and it wasn't his first offense.
They were pulled over, and Clarence had a bench warrant for a minor charge that he had done and was arrested. Clarence leaves the picture, and it has to go do about 60 to 90 days in jail.
With Clarence incarcerated, this leaves Grace and Carmen by themselves. And they support one another. Grace works inside the home taking care of the kids, and Carmen works outside the home.
I'm so exhausted. You would not believe the day that I had today.
Tell me about it, honey.
Carmen and Grace formed a very close relationship while Clarence was gone.
In November 2007, after serving a 60-day sentence, Clarence was released from jail. And with Carmen and Grace closer than ever, the trio's bond was even stronger than before. So strong that a few weeks later, they started looking around for a new home together.
They moved to a particular location here in Greenville, a trailer in an area not far from downtown Greenville.
It's nothing fancy, but there's enough room for the kids to play outside.
But less than 2 months after moving into their new home, Clarence, Carmen, and Grace's lives are changed forever. It starts on the morning of April 7th, 2008, when police make a gruesome discovery outside 2 South Greenville residences.
When we see body parts being left at a location with a threatening letter, we're thinking anything and everything.
Those letters were directly threatening to Grace Davis. It appeared that the killer sent them in some type of an effort to intimidate her.
Of course, we're trying to figure out how is she linked? What is she linked to? What is going on here?
But those questions are only the beginning. And soon, a suspicious character from Grace's past will emerge from the shadows. A person who seemed hell-bent on destroying her new life and everyone in it.
A person had called Grace's family claiming that they knew who had committed the crime.
In the spring of 2008, single mother Grace Davis had turned over a new leaf. She had escaped a verbally abusive marriage, and after a stint at a local women's shelter, Grace was welcomed into the home of married couple Clarence and Carmen Jenkins.
They brought Grace and her kids in the home and treated them all like family.
But on April 7th, 2008, the trio's life together takes an unexpected twist.
Body parts and threatening notes addressed to Grace Davis were found outside of 2 homes near Greenville. It appeared initially that these 2 locations were selected at random.
Well, I've worked a lot of deaths, and you have your gunshots, your stab wounds, your traffic fatalities, natural deaths, drug overdoses, but never anything like this. Methodical, thought out, planned. Obviously, somebody was intent on sending a message to someone, and I had never in my career experienced this type of death.
The first step for investigators is to identify the victim.
You always start your victimology as soon as you get there. Who are you? Why are you here? Why did this happen to you? But normally we have a body to say, who are you? Here we had a hand and a foot. So the who are you is where's the rest of you? Obviously somebody's sending a very strong message to go to this extent.
As the body parts are transported to the medical examiner's office for identification, investigators take a closer look at the 2 threatening letters found with the bags.
The notes threaten Grace's life. They also state that her family will suffer a slow and painful death unless she returns to an entity known as the organization.
They really didn't make any sense. It was kind of like Bizarro World, because it talks about an organization and owing money, and it just didn't make any sense. It wasn't the type of case that we normally worked in Greenville.
Well, law enforcement didn't have a clue at that point what the organization was. Was it legitimate? Was it a farce? No one had any intelligence or law enforcement's intel. I'd never heard of an organization like this in Greenville. This was extremely odd. We had no idea at all at that particular time what they were talking about.
Detectives speak to the only witnesses they have at this point and immediately make another connection to Grace.
Police interview the 2 homeowners where the body parts are found. Sandra Barnes, Grace's aunt, lives at one of the residences, and Jade Burrows, Grace's mother, lives at the other.
Grace, oddly enough, was not living at either of those locations.
Of course, one of the first things we started doing was looking for Grace Davis, trying to find out if Grace Davis was okay.
So does this handwriting on this envelope look familiar to you?
Sandra tells the police that the handwriting on the envelope looks like that of Willie Dayton, Grace's estranged husband.
So you think that Willie is the one that authored these notes?
Yes. Recently, he was ordered to pay child support.
The first letter reached the family a week after Willie was ordered to pay monthly child support.
The timing of this crime made Willie a prime suspect.
We knew that he was having to pay child support for the children, and they split up, and his name is mentioned in the letters.
But could a dispute over child support really have sparked such a heinous crime? After speaking to Grace's mother, Jade Burrows, detectives believe that may indeed be the case.
She left him because he was so abusive to her.
The night before, Grace's mother received a call. Grace's mother told us that it was a female that called, and there was an indication that someone was going to die and that Willie was responsible.
At the time, Grace's mother thought the call might just be a prank, but now detectives believe it may have been a warning.
He was really upset about it.
Detectives now have 2 immediate objectives. One is to determine if the severed body parts belong to Grace Davis, and 2, to find Willie as soon as possible.
But as detectives work to hunt down Willie Dayton, the identity of their victim is revealed, and in the process turns everything they know about the case on its head.
Okay, we know who you are now. Now why? Why are you here?
On April 7, 2008, 2 gruesome packages were delivered to the homes of the aunt and mother of 34-year-old Grace Davis.
They had found trash bags in front of their residences that contained body parts.
Accompanying the body parts were notes threatening Grace and her family. They were supposedly written by an anonymous group called the Organization.
But who exactly was behind the crime? After speaking with Grace's aunt, Sandra Barnes, and her mother, Jade Burrows, police believe someone other than a member of a menacing organized crime ring sent the letters. Someone with a more personal axe to grind.
Grace's aunt believed that Grace's ex-husband Willie was angry about having to pay child support. Additionally, Grace's aunt and her mother had received anonymous phone calls implicating Willie.
Making matters worse, Grace is nowhere to be found.
She's not at home, and everybody's worried that the body parts are hers.
Later that day, detectives track Willie Dayton down at his home and ask him to come down to the station for questioning.
He came in on his own, placed him in an interview room, and just basically asked him point blank, are you involved in this? Are you responsible for these letters?
I don't know anything about any letters.
Okay, well, were you mad that you had to pay Grace child support?
No.
So you're saying this is not the letter with your handwriting?
What? No.
He denied every bit of it.
Willie Dayton claims he has an alibi that places him on the other side of town at 7 a.m., the same time the body parts were discovered.
You can ask the people in the lobby. I was with them the whole time.
He actually brought 2 people with him, and they were his alibi. They vouched for him and stated that, at the time the letters were left, the body parts were left, that he was at home. Just my gut feeling was that he wasn't involved.
It's a surprising dead end for investigators. But with the help of forensic experts, their luck is about to change.
On the letters that were left with the body parts, one of our forensics techs called me and said, man, we got a really good fingerprint off these notes. This fingerprint was like an arrest record, whereas the fingerprint was rolled on the paper, so you had the entire print. And he says, really weird.
Police submit the print into a national database system. Soon after, they receive word there's a match.
The fingerprints on the notes matched the prints from the severed hands. However, those prints did not match Grace Davis. It was determined that those fingerprints actually belonged to another woman altogether.
Her name is Nicole Harris.
Now, you almost have this parallel investigation going on, okay, who's Nicole Harris?
You have Grace, who is missing, and then you have letters attached to severed hands and feet. But the body parts themselves belong to another young woman who seems to have, up until this point, no connection to the case.
Like Grace Davis, Nicole Harris is a Greenville native. That afternoon, detectives deliver the tragic news to Nicole's family.
We do believe that she's been murdered.
It's devastating, tragic. I mean, you hear that your loved one, that their body was dismembered.
It just hurts. It hurts. I was hoping that she couldn't survive it. But they were saying the nature of the way the cuts was made, it wasn't no way.
I know this is a tough time for you, but is there anything that you can tell us about Nicole?
Born in 1973, Nicole Harris was the youngest of 7 siblings.
She's very happy, and everybody loved her.
She was sweet. I mean, she didn't cry much. I mean, she did just want to follow me everywhere and go everywhere with me and stuff.
But as a child, Nicole struggled in school.
She seemed to really turn inward as a child, and she had a hard time connecting socially to the other young kids.
She just started hanging out with the wrong crowd. She was hanging out and stuff like that late at night, wasn't going to school.
That cycle went on and on until she was old enough to leave.
As an adult, Nicole continued to struggle.
Nicole Harris was basically homeless. She lived from house to house to house. Nicole Harris did have a record with our department. She had a lifestyle that to feed a drug addiction that basically put her on the street.
I don't think she was ever arrested for drug possession, I don't think. But I do know she had several prostitutions.
Basically what Nicole Harris did was hang around labor finders, and when the men came in at the end of the day and got their money, then she was there.
Unfortunately, prostitutes are engaged in sort of behind-the-scenes activities. They're easy targets for somebody who wants to commit a heinous act or a murder or a violent act, because who's going to care what happens to a prostitute is their mindset.
For investigators, Nicole's checkered past opens up a floodgate of possible perpetrators.
It put a lot of potential suspects in our laps. Just knowing that the type of lifestyle that she had.
When was the last time that you spoke to Nicole?
I spoke to her Wednesday or Thursday, April 3rd, I think.
My mom said, I will pick you up this weekend, go to a shelter or something, I'll come get you this weekend.
But as her mother points out, Nicole never made it to a shelter that weekend.
My baby, my baby.
It's a heartbreaking story, but investigators need to know one more thing.
Do you think that Nicole knew a lady named Grace Davis?
No.
So the name Grace Davis does not ring a bell?
No.
Though they've identified their victim, detectives aren't sure what to do next.
The burning question is, what is the link between these two women? And where is Grace Davis?
But on the morning of April 8th, police finally resolve one burning question.
We found Grace Davis and knew that she was alive.
She had apparently moved from the Jenkins home and was now living with her cousin in Greenville. This is why it took so long to locate her.
We found Grace, had Grace come to the law enforcement center.
Here's a woman that's found herself in a great situation with Carmen and Clarence Jenkins. She now has a roof over her head. She's no longer subject to the abuse of her husband. And all indications are the three are getting along extremely well. So the question remains, why would she suddenly move out of the Jenkins' house and in with her cousin?
What Grace is about to tell detectives will shift the sands of this entire investigation, exposing another side to this demure young woman that no one could believe.
What's Grace hiding? Grace not being honest with us? Is she not telling us something?
"24 hours after police in Greenville, South Carolina recovered 2 bags of body parts, detectives have made 2 stunning discoveries. First, the victim is a 34-year-old homeless woman named Nicole Harris. And second, Grace Davis, the woman originally believed to be the victim, is alive and well.
Both these women had sordid pasts, but while Grace seemed to turn a corner, Nicole had a severe addiction and she'd been arrested for prostitution. So it begged the question, what was the connection between these 2 women?
On April 8th, 2008, detectives sit down with Grace Davis for the first time.
Are you sure there's no one that would want to hurt you?
No, not really.
Grace, I need you to be honest with me, okay?
I think Grace was embarrassed about the situation and really didn't want to talk about it until we pushed her.
That's when Grace reveals a shocking secret.
What we ultimately found out from Grace was that Grace and Clarence Jenkins had an affair. Clarence Jenkins presented Grace Davis as his cousin to his wife, Carmen. Grace ended up moving in with Carmen and Clarence.
This explains why Carmen is so receptive to Grace, because Clarence told her that Grace was his cousin. She's okay with their relationship. She has no idea that anything inappropriate is going on between them.
But Grace says the affair came to an abrupt end when Clarence was sentenced to 2 months in jail for outstanding driving offenses.
So now it's just Grace and Carmen in the house, and that's when things really take a strange twist.
During the time that Clarence was away, Grace Davis and Carmen Jenkins became involved in a relationship.
They sort of fell in love with each other.
So now Grace has gone from intensely passionate and sexual relationship with Clarence to an equally sexually passionate relationship with Carmen, his wife.
This is very shocking that she would be involved in something like this.
Grace tells police that the relationship between her and Carmen became so intense that when Clarence was released from prison in the fall of 2007, they decided to come clean about their relationship. Although according to Grace, Clarence's response wasn't quite what they imagined.
Clarence, I guess, agreed with it, and now they have this threesome, this love triangle's going on. They're all living together.
Well, Grace was real quiet. You would have never thought that she would intervene in, a triangle, or anything like that.
But Grace explains that over time, Clarence began to dominate both her and Carmen.
That is where the manipulation started. That is where the control started.
Clarence didn't like them working He didn't want them going out in the public. He was jealous. He made them stay at home. They were submissive, and Clarence was running the show.
He would get intoxicated and want to engage in ridiculously crazy sexual activities that they may not want to do, but they would do them anyways.
Basically, they had this wedding ceremony where they made a pact that they would stay together, and basically they did their own wedding, and they signed these vows.
So they're all three adults living in this house and having sexual relations with each other while there are kids in this house. None of this is healthy, zero. It could not be healthy from no way that you can look at it. When there's kids involved, when you bring someone into your marriage to manipulate the other partner, there's nothing healthy that can come from this type of relationship.
Ultimately, in March of 2008, Social Services catches wind of the situation, removes Grace's children, and awards custody of them to Grace's aunt.
When that happened, she became very upset.
Grace was not going to tolerate having DSS remove her children. And when that happened, she found a way out.
The Department of Social Services told Grace that if she ever wanted to get her children back, she'd have to leave Carmen and Clarence Jenkins.
Grace was trying to get out of the situation because he was so controlling.
Grace Davis wanted her kids back, and Grace Davis knew that she had to get out of this relationship, get her own residence established, and that's what she did. She basically walked away, and that was her last contact with Carmen and Clarence.
Grace's story is shocking, but it still doesn't explain her connection to Nicole Harris.
She had never heard of Nicole Harris, so investigators still don't know her involvement in this case.
It seems investigators have hit yet another roadblock. But perhaps there's another way forward. A piece of evidence hidden at the crime scene may be the clue that cracks this case wide open.
We could trace the IP address. That was key. Now we've got the connection. It was huge.
Police in Greenville, South Carolina are trying to unravel a bizarre mystery that culminated with the death of a local homeless woman named Nicole Harris.
Her hands and feet have been found in bags outside the homes of the relatives of Grace Davis.
There are so many questions regarding this case. Where is the rest of Nicole's body? And who killed her? And why did they do it? And what connection does Nicole have to Grace?
Nicole Harris, she had a shadowy background in one of alleged drug involvement and alleged prostitution.
But once you consider the bizarre death threats against Grace Davis, many of the typical motives for Nicole's death just don't make sense.
Investigators uncover the scintillating story of a three-way romance between Grace and her roommates, Carmen and Clarence Jenkins.
There was literally a menage a trois of emotions going on between the three.
All three are having sex with each other. Eventually, Social Services finds out, and they take Grace's children. In an effort to regain custody, she moves out and stays with her cousin.
While Grace's story raises eyebrows, it offers no concrete link between her and Nicole Harris. With their investigation at an impasse, detectives decide to explore a different angle.
In the letters that were with the body parts, there was an email address.
The author of the letters demanded that Grace respond by a certain time to the email address.
We solicited the help of our computer crimes investigators to start tracking down this email address.
Turns out, the account had been checked several times in the past few days. But that's not all.
We learned that email address actually came back in Grace's name.
So it's coming from Grace's email. How is that possible?
So by now, everybody's really confused. These letters are threatening Grace, and the email that they provided in the letters is in Grace's name.
Compounding this mystery is the fact that the IP address where it was created is not registered to Grace Davis.
We could trace the IP addresses back, and it traced back to the downtown library.
The fact that the IP address is registered to the Greenville Public Library gives detectives hope.
The library in this case had a camera system.
We pulled surveillance footage for the times that we were given that these IP addresses checked this email address.
If Grace appears on this footage, then it's likely she wrote the emails as part of a scheme to murder Nicole and get away with it.
But when they screened the library surveillance footage on April 15th, detectives are thrown for a loop.
We were able to obtain video of Carmen and Clarence coming into the library, going to the 15-minute computer, and then leaving the library.
We've now got video from the library showing Clarence and Carmen walking into the library about the same time, using that email address as well, setting it up.
In addition, the IP used to access this address at another location was also connected to them.
The location being the trailer of Clarence and Carmen Jenkins. Detectives decide it's time to pay the couple a visit.
We finally make a decision, let's make contact. Myself and another investigator, we go to the home, we knock on the door. Carmen Jenkins answers the door. We explain who we are. We explain to her that we'd like to talk to her and Clarence. And she tells us at the time, which was kind of odd to me, that Clarence was in the bathroom and it would be a while. And I says, fine. But she agreed to come to the law enforcement center and talk to us. So we left.
Later that day, Carmen comes into the office.
Carmen comes in, she's in the office. I basically show her a picture of Nicole Harris and say, do you know her?
Carmen claims not to know who Nicole Harris is, and police notice something strange about her demeanor.
During the interview, Carmen was just really stone cold. No emotion, I mean, not even facial twitches, not even, very rarely made eye contact, looked down at the floor the whole time.
She was very standoffish and just like reserved and sitting to herself and not like wanting to show any emotion.
I just had that gut feeling on Carmen Jenkins at the time.
Unable to get anything out of Carmen, police don't have enough evidence to make an arrest, and they let Carmen leave. If they could get inside the Jenkins home, they may be able to dig up substantial evidence. But how? Now that Carmen knows police are looking, their time is limited.
When she walked out that door, now we're almost in panic mode of, all right, what do we do now?
But investigators catch another lucky break.
Sometimes things play in our favor. We got a call from a county investigator who found a brand new warrant that was just issued from a county magistrate on Clarence Jenkins for a traffic summons.
So with an active warrant, we can go anywhere we want to effectuate the service of that warrant. And so that's what we decided to do.
That afternoon, detectives knock on the front door of the Jenkins trailer.
Can I help you?
Carmen told us that Clarence wasn't at the house, that he was gone. We explained we had an arrest warrant and that we were going to search the residence for him.
Come in.
And that if she was lying to us, that she could be prosecuted for obstruction. It was filthy. It was bad. I mean, when you walked in the front door, there's the bathroom. As you move on back, the kitchen just piled up with dirty dishes, with food still in them, plates with food, pots with food. I'll never forget, probably the saddest thing was the infant laying on the bed in the back bedroom, and there was a pair of adult soiled underwear laying within inches of this child laying on this bed. It was nasty.
But as officers initiate their search for Clarence, they quickly realize this trailer isn't just a potential hideout.
In searching for Clarence Jenkins, we saw several things. In a front bathroom, we saw what appeared to be suspected blood spatter on the walls.
There was sheetrock that had been ripped off, Clorox bottles as well.
Everything from ground to about thigh high had been painted with red spray paint. We found a set of handcuffs and other stuff.
In addition to what appears to be evidence of a violent crime, officers also find Clarence himself.
He was hiding inside a closet. Once we made the arrest on Clarence Jenkins, we arrested Carmen Jenkins for obstruction of justice.
With Clarence and Carmen in custody, police execute a full search warrant on the Jenkins trailer and vehicle.
One of the first things we found was a metal clipboard, and inside that metal clipboard was copies of the notes that were left with the body parts. We found Nicole Harris's DNA in their house, in their shower.
But while police might have a growing mountain of evidence linking Clarence and Carmen to the crime, they're still missing two giant pieces of the puzzle.
We don't have a why, and we don't have a body. We still don't have a clue. What did they do with Nicole Harris?
At that point in time, what we need right now is one of the defendants to cooperate.
Investigators believe their best bet lies with Carmen.
Right now, you're looking at the death penalty.
I think Carmen at one point was a good person, and she had morals and she had a conscience. Doesn't this person deserve to have a burial and their family know where they are? And I think that her conscience was telling her yes.
So are you going to be willing to work with us?
Yes.
She decided to come clean and testify in exchange for the death penalty being removed.
To start with, detectives ask for the location of Nicole's body.
We dumped and burned her body in a field up on Altamont Road, north of the town.
So we take law enforcement out to the location, and in fact, we do find a significant portion of Nicole Harris's bones out there.
Now that detectives have found Nicole, they ask Carmen to start from the beginning. Carmen explains that Clarence was infuriated when Grace Davis left their unique three-way relationship, or as Clarence called it, the organization.
Clarence missed Grace being part of their family, and he wanted her back. So he came up with this plan to get Grace back.
Carmen says that Clarence's plan called for someone to be leverage, and he instantly thought of Nicole Harris.
They thought no one would miss her. So this wasn't like a random pick. They knew her.
Hey, baby, you like the party tonight? Why not? Come on.
Clarence actually rolled up on Nicole Harris out on the street, got out with a badge and told Nicole that he was a vice officer and that she was under arrest for prostitution. And handcuffed her. Clarence basically came in the trailer with Nicole Harris, put her in a chair in the living room.
There, Carmen says, Clarence used Nicole to make a series of threatening phone calls to Grace's family.
They get Nicole Harris to say a script that Carmen Jenkins has written out for her. And the cousin of Grace Davis just sort of hangs up.
Carmen says when that plan failed to elicit a response from Grace, Clarence ratcheted up the stakes.
Are you hungry?
They kept her alive overnight, and later the next day, basically, I guess at some point, Clarence decided that they were going to kill Nicole. They fed her this ice cream with this, sleep aid medicine in the ice cream and strangled her to death.
They murdered Nicole savagely. They cut off her hands and her feet, and they put those parts in 2 separate bags. And they took those bags to Grace's family's house, her mother's house and her aunt's house.
They then took the body and put it in the back of the van, along with some other things, and drove it out to a lot.
I think the extreme that he went to get somebody back in his life, it's just the whole case is bizarre.
It's an unusual and twisted story, but the true depths of this house of horrors have yet to be explored.
It's a horrible place to die.
On April 9th, 2012, exactly 4 years and 2 days after the abduction, murder, and dismemberment of 34-year-old Nicole Harris, Clarence Jenkins is led into a Greenville County, South Carolina courthouse to stand trial for her death.
It was a horrible case, unfathomable what happened.
She was trying to get her life together before she got murdered.
Didn't seem real.
So as it turns out, Carmen rolls over on Clarence. She tells everything. She pleads guilty, and she does this in exchange for a lighter sentence. And unfortunately for Clarence, he's in this all alone.
In their opening statement, prosecutors assert Nicole was an innocent victim of a bizarre and senseless crime, one rooted in the defendant's twisted desire to dominate and control 2 troubled women, Carmen and Grace. And when Grace moved out in order to protect her children, Clarence became blind with rage.
Clarence was somebody who was very skilled and adept at controlling others. He wants to have Grace back. He does not accept her choice to leave, and he's going to do anything or say anything that will bring her back into their life.
How could you go through with something like that? And that's a question I can't answer. I just can't rationalize that irrational behavior.
In order to show jurors the true depths of Clarence's depravity, prosecutors call their star witness to the stand, Carmen Jenkins.
She spoke without emotion. And she described in detail exactly what had happened leading up to Nicole Harris's death.
According to Carmen, it all began after Grace left their home in the spring of 2008.
She said that when Grace Davis left, he was extremely upset, and that no one's going to do that to his organization, and that he was going to take care of this.
I think that speaks to his grandiose sense of himself, that he is the CEO and he is the leader of this organization.
Still, Carmen says she never could have foreseen what happened on April 6, 2008.
About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Clarence Jenkins shows up at the trailer with Nicole Harris.
Why are you doing this?
Strip this bitch. Shut up! Just do what I say.
Carmen says she followed Clarence's orders that night. But the next morning, he demanded she do something else.
There was a coaxial cable for like a cable television in the trailer, and he told Carmen to go strangle her.
She wraps the cord around her neck and attempts to strangle her for a couple of minutes. And she goes back into the room and says, "Clarence, I couldn't do it. I'm not strong enough."
I can't do nothing. Right. God. Hey, little girl. Hey.
He walks back out into the room and he takes the cord and he strangles Nicole Harris.
The feet.
At that point, they moved her into a bathroom. Clarence tried to dismember her with a machete, but the blood spatter was too much. So they left the house and came back with garden snips. And basically they cut her hands and her feet off.
I don't understand how a person can just take a person's life and the way they took her life, and just cut her up.
It's powerful testimony, but Clarence's attorneys argue that Carmen, not Clarence, was the crime's true mastermind.
They tried to make it like Clarence was a submissive one and Carmen was the mastermind. She ruled the house. This was her relationship with Grace. This was, she's the one that wanted this relationship back, that Clarence was just along for the ride.
Some in the courtroom find the argument compelling. To others, it rings false.
It was clear that she was submissive or intimidated and that he was in control.
On April 13, 2012, both sides conclude their final arguments. The following morning, jurors return with their verdict.
That minute that the jury walks through that door, you feel that nervousness of, how's it going to go? Where's it going to go? Especially in a case like this.
The jury comes in, the clerk of court reads the verdict, guilty of murder.
Clarence was sentenced to life in prison.
And we sitting there like, wanting to just jump around and hug everybody that helped it take place.
In exchange for Carmen's testimony and cooperation, she received a sentence of 50 years behind bars.
While many people feel Carmen deserved the same punishment as her husband, there are others who believe she too was a victim.
Is Carmen innocent? No. Did Carmen have the opportunity to stop this? I can't say that. Did Carmen have the opportunity to tell somebody about this? Yeah. Yes, she did.
I didn't feel bad for Clarence, but I did for Carmen. For her to feel like her only option was to do what this guy said do, that broke my heart. She knew it was wrong, but she felt like her only option was to keep her hand in the fire.
As for Grace Davis, she moved away, remarried, and recently became a grandmother. But while there were many victims in this tragic story, one person alone paid the ultimate price: Nicole Harris.
She is the true victim in all of this because her life is gone. She never gets a chance to make a change. She never gets a chance to tell her side of the story.
Nicole was pure collateral damage, an innocent victim in all of this. All because Clarence wanted to stay in control of the situation. You have two women who were just trying to keep their heads above water, and you have a man who wanted to make sure he kept them in check. And when one of them finally decided to leave and escape, he tries to get back that control any way he can, even if it meant killing an innocent person.